Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another pre-recorded lesson video. Hopefully, you are keeping up with it. Hopefully, y'all watched the last lesson video because that one was actually pretty important because that was going over chapter 7. And chapter 7 is a pretty important one because it sort of goes into the start of the Montgomery bus boycott, um, which is a main thing in this book. What else? Oh, we will be finishing up this book either this week or at the start of next week, okay? Make sure you are watching the lesson videos because what is going to happen is I'm going to upload a book quiz from chapter 6 to chapter 10, okay? So look out for that. I think the grades for chapters 1 through 5 quiz was actually pretty good, which is telling me that either you're keeping up with the lesson videos or y'all are very good at guessing, okay? Remember, if you have any questions, just let me know, right? If you can't access the videos, let me know, and I will help you work something out. Start testing is beginning soon, so a lot of you are getting phone calls saying that you need to come up to the school to take that test in person. There are 2 days, I believe, that virtual students can come up to the school to take the test. I think they are, don't hold me to this. Let me look it up and then I'll get you the correct information. I think they're between I think they're May 17, 18 or May 18, 19. It's sometime near the end of May. Remember, your last day of school is May 27. A lot of you I know are failing on your first progress report grade. A lot of you are failing in this class, and I know a lot of you are failing in math. Okay, all we ask is that you just do the assignments, ask questions when you need help, right? We are here to help you, okay? But that's enough of that. Let's get into this video. So this welcome activity, this title may seem familiar, All Quiet on the Western Front. That is the book that we read for the second 9 weeks, right? So the question I want to ask is, what is a front? A front is another word for basically the main part of the action, the front lines, if you will, where basically all of the battles are taking place. So for All Quiet on the Western Front, the front was basically the trenches, right? Where a lot of the fights were happening in World War One. Why this is coming up again is the title of chapter 8 is Second Front, Second Chance, right? So that means in this book, in chapter 8, there are two fronts. First one is going to be the bus boycott, and the second one we're going to get into later in this book or later in this video. And the second part of this title is Second Chance, right? Who could the second chance be for? Hopefully, you can guess that the second chance would probably be for Claudette Colvin. She's going to get her second chance to fight for justice, clear her name, and tell her story. Okay, so let's get into it. The focusing question is still the same as what role did Claudette Colvin and others play in the civil rights movement? And the content framing question for lesson 13 is what's happening in chapter 8. We are almost done. We are flying through the lessons. I'm skipping a lot of the lessons that I wanted to do so we can just finish out the book quickly and we can move on to something else. Okay? So what's happening in chapter 8? The lesson goal for lesson 13, or the learning goal for lesson 13, is we're going to be able to explain the actions and ideas that led to the federal lawsuit, challenging segregation on buses. As you can tell by that word, federal lawsuit, that sort of is the second front that the civil rights leaders come up with, okay? In the work time, I think I'm going to upload a discussion question saying where y'all write 3 to 4 sentences explaining why and how the leaders of the MIA, the Montgomery Improvement Association, changed their approach to challenging segregated buses. Okay? Here we go. So, the bus boycott. This is going to be the major part of chapter 8. And in this lesson, the Montgomery bus boycott, again, a boycott means to refuse to buy, use, or participate in something as a way of protesting. the thing that the civil rights leaders and the Black community in Montgomery is refusing to use is the buses. So the Montgomery bus boycott lasted 382 days. It's a very long time. That is a little over a full year, right? So this is a video about the Montgomery bus boycott, a little background information. Please watch this in your own time. I will also upload this in today's folder, which is the, let me see, 4/14 folder, April 14, okay? So chapter 8, as always, I sort of changed up the format. The videos right here if you want to watch it. Chapter 8 is a little bit of a longer one. There's 2 parts. I think it is still less than 30 minutes in total. So these are the questions. I know there's a lot of questions here, but these are the main parts. I'm going to answer them for you. But before I do answer them for you, please watch this video either through this PowerPoint or through today's folder, which is again the 414 folder. Okay, so chapter 8, again, is mainly having to do with the bus boycott and then the second front, which is a federal lawsuit that the MIA leaders sue the city, take them to court, saying that segregation of buses is illegal. So the first question, after you watch the video, which again, pause this video, watch the reading video, okay, and come back to this lesson video, okay? But the first question is, what does author Philippus, which again, that's the author's name. Some of you missed that in the book quiz. What does the author Philippus mean when he writes that the Black protesters were determined to apply economic pressure peacefully? So the whole point of the bus boycott was to take money away from the city and the bus company, okay? And they were trying to do that peacefully. A lot of social movements or protest, or I don't want to say the word revolutions, but there are a lot of them that use force or violence, right? In the last lesson, Martin Luther King Jr. talks about using the tools of coercion, which is force, action, but they're doing it peacefully, which is refusing to ride the bus, okay? And they're doing that peacefully. That's a very peaceful protest. So that what they're doing is they're applying economic pressure, which is taking money away from the city peacefully, right? They're trying to hurt the bank account of the bus company, saying that we mean business, right? Listen to us, or you are going to keep losing money, okay? So that's what he meant whenever he wrote, determined to apply economic pressure peacefully. The Montgomery bus boycott was a peaceful protest. I need you guys to understand that. It was a peaceful protest. So number 2, who organized the boycott and what specific actions did they organize? So as you saw in the work time expectations, there's this little acronym called the MIA. The MIA is a organization that the civil rights leaders created called the Montgomery Improvement Association. Okay, what this organization is a organization that they created to specifically organize the bus protest, the Montgomery bus boycott. And the specific actions that they organized were that they created a carpool. A carpool is when multiple people going in the same direction, usually ride in the same car. They get picked up so they can save either on money, gas, things like that. So they organized this massive carpool so that people didn't have to take the buses, right? And some of the leaders of the MIA were people that you have heard about or read about. The president of the MIA, he got elected, was Martin Luther King Jr. Other ones from this book is Joanne Robinson, Rosa Parks, Edie Nixon, Fred Gray, who is actually right here, Fred Gray. He is Claudette Colvin's lawyer as well. Those are some of the biggest leaders of the MIA. Other leaders are Claudette's own pastor, H.H. Johnson. There's a lot of leaders or members of the MIA. A lot of people participated in the bus boycott. I would say majority of the Black community did. So some of the details and plans that came together during this boycott and this planning to make the bus boycott a success was, again, they created this massive carpool, and it only worked with careful planning. So they came up with having these pickup stations in the morning and pickup stations in the afternoon for people to go to these specific locations where they could get picked up near their homes, where they can be driven to where they needed to go, whether it was jobs, run errands like grocery stores, things like that, or go to school, right? So there's 42 in the morning, 48 in the afternoon, I believe, and there were drop-off points as well. Okay, so it is very carefully organized. There's a lot of locations, and for a carpool to work, you need a lot of cars, right? And how they got these cars were through donations. Okay, either people who already had cars donated it to the MIA to use in this massive bus boycott, or the MIA got money. They got money from people donating it to them because they believed in the cause, they believed in them, and they used that to buy cars. They actually, I think, bought like 30 cars with the money that they got. And how they got the money was, again, through donations. And they held these mass meetings where people would come in, listen to Martin Luther King Jr. talk, right? And they would ask for donations, and people would donate money because they believed in what they were doing, right? Those are just some of the specific plans that came into it. Other plans were, if people didn't want to use the buses or use the carpool, they would walk. So they would wake up very, very early in the morning so they could walk and get to their jobs on time. Okay. Other things were people would go out and pass out pamphlets, get spread information around. And again, these mass meetings that they held were very important because they updated people on certain new pickup locations or drop off locations. And again, they had a lot of money, right? And it wasn't just a couple people using these carpool lanes or walking. It was, I would say, majority of the Black community in Montgomery was participating in the bus boycott, right? Um, so uh, as you read chapter 8, you realize that the Colvin family, Claudette's family, is participating in the boycott as well. Um, Claudette in the previous chapter changes her name to Claudette Austin and moves to Birmingham because she gets kicked out of her school for being pregnant. She only stays in Birmingham for 2 weeks and decides, hey, I want to move back to Montgomery to be with my family and participate in this boycott, right? I want to be a part of the change that is happening because I started this change, right? So some of the specific things that the Colvin family do to participate is Claudette's dad, or uncle who she sees as a dad, goes out and buys a Plymouth, which is a car for the family so that their mother can use to get to work, drive other people around, things like that, right? So they don't have to take the buses or walk. Other things were they also bought a TV so they could keep up with the any new information coming out about the boycott um, or the news, right? So they could keep up with what's happening. Other things where they would always attend these mass meetings that they MIA held so they could listen to Martin Luther King Jr. talk. Right, he was the president. He was a massive leader. Whenever people think of civil rights, they usually think of Martin Luther King Jr. Right. Claudette personally participated as well. Since Claudette's mother was so busy, either driving to work, working, and or picking people up and dropping them off during this carpool, right? They had a car, so they would be one of the people picking people up and dropping them off where they needed to go. Claudette's responsibilities in the home grew, right? Claudette would have to clean more, cook, and she would have to take care of her baby as well, right? So she would just shoulder a lot of the responsibility. She'd be the main figure in the house when her mother was away or her dad was away, right? So she grew in responsibility. She took care of the house, right? And that's a very big responsibility for Claudette because at this time she's still, I believe, 16 years old. She's still a teenager. She's still a kid. And this bus boycott becomes massively successful, right? It lasts for a whole year. The city is taking notice. People are not happy because the bus companies are losing an incredible amount of money. So what's happening in Montgomery as a result of this boycott is a lot of bad things, or good things if you're looking at it from the eyes of the protesters, right? But for the city, and the city leaders, the mayor, white people, it was very bad for them. Um, so the City Lines bus company, right, the bus company that was the massive one in Montgomery, was losing around $3,000 a day. And you had to think this was going on for a whole year. So I believe they lost in total for the whole time of the bus boycott going, they lost around $1 million. $1 million back in 1955, 1956 would translate to around $11 million today, okay, for inflation. So that's a whole lot of money that they lost because they were losing so much money. They would have to fire workers. They had to get rid of a lot of buses to be able to keep their business alive because, again, they were losing so much money. Okay. Other things that were happening in Montgomery as well were the city and the mayor specifically um, started retaliating. They got police to start cracking down a lot harder on black citizens in Montgomery. Specifically, Martin Luther King Jr. gets arrested for going 30 miles per hour in a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit zone, um, which is absolutely outrageous if you think about it. Um, Sometimes you would just get a speeding ticket, right? But he just gets flat out arrested for going 5 miles over the speed limit. Okay. Um, Other things that would happen is people started bombing the homes of civil rights leaders. So Martin Luther King Jr. Got bombed. His house, they were throwing sticks of dynamite at it, trying to blow it up. They would call his home quite a bit, threatening his life. Um, What else? They poured acid on some of the leaders' cars, right? And it was people dressed up as police officers. So we don't know if it was just white citizens or white people dressing up as police officers and pretending to be them, or if it was actual police officers doing it. But there were a lot of um, terrible things that they were doing um, in response to a peaceful protest, right? Um, it's sort of outrageous if you please watch this lesson, this reading video because it goes into a lot of detail about what they were doing. The main thing is that they were reacting violently towards a peaceful protest, right? A terrible response, if one might say. Um, Other things that were happening as well were there was just a lot of violence happening in the streets at this time. Um, the white citizens were reacting in anger. A lot of death threats were being said, bombs being thrown. Um, I think that's sort of the major points of how the city responded. You just have to think of it as, again, they were responding violently to a peaceful, again, the big word, peaceful protest, right? So the Montgomery bus boycott goes around for a while, around, let's say, 100 days in. The MIA leaders start thinking that, the bus boycott, while it is very effective, right, it's not getting us to where we need to be. The city isn't going to give in. The white people aren't going to give in just because they're losing money. We need the courts to say that segregation is illegal. So this brings us to question 6, which is about the second front. Just why did the Montgomery Improvement Association leaders think a federal court case would be an effective second front to challenge segregation? Um, so they decide to take it to court. Fred Gray says, why protest peacefully? Why try to negotiate? Why hope that these things will work when we can take this to court and obliterate, destroy the laws of segregation entirely? So they decide to take it to court, and the other MIA leaders agree with it. They believe that they can win this time. Okay. Why they believe they can win this time is because of two reasons. Two reasons specifically. The first one is the case of Brown versus the Board of Education that happened a couple years ago. So this was a Supreme Court case, Brown versus the Board of Education, and that case says that the segregation of schools is illegal. It's unconstitutional. So they're saying you cannot keep people away from schools or close schools off to people because of the color of their skin and their race. Okay? So the MIA leaders start thinking, if the Supreme Court says schools can't be segregated, why are buses still segregated, right? If certain aspects of society have to be open to everybody, why doesn't every aspect of society have to be open to everybody? Right? So Fred Gray looks at this and says, why are we just looking for better seating patterns or better behavior or nicer behavior from the drivers? Why not just get rid of the whole thing and sit wherever we want, right? If we get the federal courts to decide that we get or that segregation is illegal, right? We don't have to do this bus protest anymore, right? We don't have to, because then everything is open. The buses are open, right? No one has to walk anymore. So Fred Gray decides to challenge it based off the Brown versus Board of Education. And the second reason is the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment is an amendment in the Constitution, says that no state or laws can take away the rights or freedoms of any American citizen, right? And the segregation of buses takes away the rights and the freedoms of Black citizens in the South or any minority in the South, right? So those are the two main reasons they try to take it to court, and they do take it to court. And instead of taking it to a state court, which is the next appeal, they decided to appeal it all the way to the federal level. Why this is important is if they decided to just take this to the state case, then they would end up with a judge from Alabama. And the likelihood of that judge from Alabama agreeing with them is very low. But a judge from a federal case, which has to be from the US government, is a higher likeliness that they agree that segregation is illegal, right? Because maybe they get a northern judge, right? A more sympathetic judge. So they decide to take this to court, right? So Fred Gray comes up with a plan. He says, I need witnesses, I need plaintiffs, I need people on my side that can tell their story of the pain and suffering that they went through on these buses, right? I need someone that has a great story and can convince the jury and the judges that segregation is illegal and needs to go away. So what Fred Gray does is he starts coming up with a list of witnesses he can call on. And he decides that the witnesses just need one thing: courage. They need to be able to shrug off any hate that they get, because the white people will come after them and threaten them. They need courage. They can't be scared. They need to be brave enough to stand in court and not be afraid of what happens to them, because every other civil rights leader right now is under attack, but they're still fighting, right? Martin Luther King Jr. says a quote in chapter 8. It says, even if I may die, this revolution will still go on. So Martin Luther King Jr. was doing all this, prepared to die for it, and preparing to give up his life for a better life for everyone else, right? So they're saying the witnesses need that same personality trait, right? So he comes up with 5 people, and one of them you already know, Mary Louise Smith, and the second one that we already know is Claudette Colvin. Fred Gray decides he needs Claudette Colvin because she has the best story to tell. She's already been in court before. She's already faced all of this hate. She's ready. And again, she has the best story to tell. So Fred Gray calls Claudette Colvin and her family, visits her again. And remember, at this time, Claudette's sort of on the sideline. She's been forgotten by the other civil rights leaders. So Claudette is very excited whenever Fred Gray calls and asks her to be a witness in this case. Which leads us to question 7 is, in what ways was this lawsuit Claudette's second chance? Claudette was not happy the first time because she lost. She was found guilty of a crime that she didn't really do. So Claudette says, this is my second chance to win. This is my second chance to fight for justice. This is my second chance to tell my story and end the institution of segregation forever. Okay, Claudette wants to go back up there and fight once more. She sees this as a second chance to fight for justice and have a stage to tell her story. That's why she's so excited. She agrees immediately, and this sets the stage for chapter 9, which is the court case, which is going to be tomorrow. Okay. Hopefully this makes sense. I'm going to go over some brief summary of the main points. So the Montgomery bus boycott lasts for 382 days, right? From 1955 to 1956, as Black protesters chose the bus boycott as the first front as a strategy to affect social change peacefully, right? They're affecting social change peacefully by applying economic pressure, right? Who's defined the Black protester strategy? This means that the Black protesters used the bus boycott as a non-violent, big word, non-violent way to affect the city's economy. If Black citizens stopped riding the buses, the city would lose a lot of money, and that would pressure them to end segregation on the buses. As we all know, that doesn't end up happening, so they had to take it to a second front, which is the court case. To what degree did the Black protesters succeed, creating social change by applying economic pressures peacefully? They succeeded. They 100% succeeded by applying economic pressures peacefully, but the civil rights leaders knew, the MIA leaders knew that they needed to do something else because the protests weren't going to end segregation by itself. So they turned to the second front, which is the federal lawsuit. So here's some definitions. A class action lawsuit is a lawsuit representing a group of people who share a common claim against another. This is different from a regular lawsuit of just one person suing another person, or a company suing another company. This is a group of people who have a problem against one person, and they all sue him for that one reason. This is a class action lawsuit because, again, it is 5 lawsuits or 5 people suing the city of Montgomery. So the plaintiff, which is your next vocab, is a person who begins a lawsuit against someone else. A plaintiff is the one that makes a claim against another. So if I sue someone, take them to court, saying that they wronged me, I'm the plaintiff in that. And the person I'm suing is the defendant, which leads us to that next definition, or the last one, the person or organization who was accused in a lawsuit or court of law. So the person getting sued by me is a defendant in that they had to defend themselves in court. That's what they call the defendant. The defendant in this lawsuit is the city of Montgomery. And the person they choose to take to court is the mayor, William Gale. So this is the quote I was talking about from Fred Gray. It says, instead of politely asking for modest reforms in seating patterns and more courteous behavior from the drivers, why not try to obliterate the segregation laws in court? Okay? He's basically saying, why are we asking for just small changes? Let's just get rid of the whole thing in court, right? We can win this. We can win it this time. It's basically what Fred Gray is saying. Those are basically some of the main points of chapter 8 and lesson 13. Hopefully this made sense. Again, if it doesn't, or if you're having trouble watching the lesson video or the reading video, let me know. Okay, message me on Schoology, email me, and I'd be more than happy to help you out. I will be uploading a discussion assignment as well, where I think it's just writing 3 to 4 sentences. It'll be pretty easy. You won't have to respond to another classmate. Last announcement before you leave, please, 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 please do your 3-week assessment if you have not already, because that is a major grade. But other than that, that is it for this lesson video. I'll see you here for the next one. Bye.